Let's talk about sprays next. A lot of people will use sprays as a preventative. I used to rotate my sprays. I used to do like neem oil one week, and the next week do peppermint spray. The next week do a rosemary spray. I've used products like Mammoth Can Control, which is, from my understanding, I think it's thyme oil and a corn oil, if I remember correctly. And then there's also the amazing Dr. Zymes, which is a product I've used and been very, very helpful for not just pest prevention, but also like eliminating pests as well. Can you give us your overall thoughts on those type of products I mentioned and kind of the rotating, maybe some best practices on rotating them?
Yeah, well, I would say that I think that your context really dictates whether I would personally use it or not. For example, if you have a situation where you typically get a lot of pests, like kind of constantly, like a low pressure but still present, like thrips are really famous for this kind of thing. They'll get in, they won't, maybe you can keep the population from getting high, but you're constantly having them. And if you know that they're coming around like late spring and summer, then maybe you start applying this previously before you have a problem, and then you don't have like this population increase. So you could go at like a weekly rate or a biweekly rate of some sort of like a pyrethrin product, for example, or maybe as a duractin or something like in veg. But you have to be careful, and I'm very hesitant about using things in flower, not necessarily because a product might be non-toxic or might volatilize quickly or something like this where you don't have residual. However, you might still like disrupt the trichomes or other sorts of things that might be a quality control issue. So in some cases it might matter. In some cases, I would not necessarily go that route.
Okay. And rotating the sprays on like a weekly basis, for example, is that effective, would you say? Because I think you touched upon this in the beginning of the episode where it's like pests can kind of get used to it, right? So if you're spraying neem every single week, they can get used to it, and then it's not really doing anything to them. So rotating around, peppermint is a common one that you hear about using, rosemary. Those three in particular, I used to rotate around every week. Would you say that could be effective for the average home grower? Is there a different spray that you would add in or replace?
Yeah, well, I think that, so like the products that you're talking about, they work kind of broadly against a lot of different like insect and mite pests. So if those are the things you're concerned with, then yeah, that could be helpful. Although I would say that typically, I think from that Everswarm concept we talked about, if you want to disrupt a system, you want to have redundancy. That can mean greater cost sometimes because you have different products being applied that kind of do similar things or do them in a different way. And that might seem too redundant, but actually it's helpful for resistance management. Also, when you're applying these products, like you don't know what pests you're going to encounter. So an insecticidal agent is not going to affect like a fungus, for example. So again, when you're rotating, a lot of that's, I think, going to be based on when you normally encounter these pests. So like maybe in autumn and winter, perhaps you get more fungal problems. Maybe it rains a lot more where you're at. And so you might start applying like a potassium bicarbonate product, which is going to have like a pH effect on the foliage. It has negative effects against like powdery mildew. But you might follow that up with like an oil product or something that also harms the spores and also kills the fungi in a different way, just as an example.
This clip is brought to you by AC Infinity. Use discount code MrGrow at 15 to save on any of their products.